Dear participants, hello. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining us to the webinar today. My name is Margit Rammo. I come from Estonia, and I am delighted to welcome you all across Nordic and Baltic countries to this webinar, Career Development Practices from the Capabilities Perspective of Social Justice. No, it's too early. In Euroguidance Network, we are deeply passionate about internationalization, innovation, and competence development of career guidance professionals. There are many initiatives that support this mission, and we are excited to be part of this dynamic network. Career Guidance Up North is one of our latest and newest initiatives, a webinar series designed specifically for Nordic and Baltic guidance practitioners and in close cooperation with Nordic and Baltic Euroguidance centers. And I can say that this is just the beginning. We have several seminars in this row, and we invite you to join for those as well. And we will share more details about it at the end of current session. But I really recommend to follow all the Euroguidance channels, both at network level and national level, to stay tuned about the initiative in coming months. Today we focus on career development and social justice. Social justice is a term that is often mentioned, but sometimes is misunderstood and a bit abstract. And in the context of career guidance, it needs a bit of elaboration. So our goal today is to explore the concept and make it more practical and more tangible during the presentations and the discussions at a later stage. So, and the content of today's webinars is based of the lovely book that our Canadian company CERIC has published in 2019. In Estonia, we are lucky to have this also in our native language, and we launched this kind of webinars a couple of years ago when the editors of the book, Nancy MacArthur, Robert Borgen, and Mary McMahon, were introducing the whole concept of this great collection. And today we are starting like a new phase, and we are cooperating closely with our Nordic and Baltic colleagues in Euroguidance Network, and we hope that this great collection of articles will be also interesting for you. We will add some links to the book and the special blog article prepared by our trainers to the chat any minute. Now I would like to share some technical aspects with you. First of all, we discuss the certificates and ask whether you need certificates. Many of you need the certificates for this session. So I need you to ask to check how you are named in this Zoom window, so that make sure that you have full name and preferably also reference to your country, so it makes it easier to communicate during the session. And also during these 2 hours, we have planned for you some to use the chat for reflection and questions. We have prepared some interactive polls, and we will also have a little session to discuss in a groups. So really, we have prepared an engaging learning session for you, trying the very best that the virtual environment offers. And also one technical thing for our Estonian listeners, that we do have interpretation available today. So look for the little globe on your toolbar and choose the language you prefer. Of course, our colleagues from other countries are welcome to check how Estonian sounds, but this is the option for this seminar for the Estonian community. This is all right now from me, and I hand over to my dear colleague from Latvia, Ilse Jansone, will take you through the next steps. Thanks again and enjoy the webinar.
Yes, hello everybody. It's very exciting to be with you today. Since we all come from cold countries, both the participants from the Nordic and Baltic countries and our guests from Canada. So I think we need a little bit of warming up first of all, to check the technology, if you are able to access the buttons for Zoom, I have a little warm-up exercise for you. And we also would like to see if you are able to manage your cameras to turn the video on or off. So let's start by welcoming the Baltic colleagues. All the colleagues who are from the Baltic countries, please turn on your cameras, and the ones who are not from the Baltic countries, please see if you can find a little emoji you can clap or maybe wave or something like that. So the Nordic countries can turn off their cameras at the moment. I see at least one Nordic colleague. Okay, good. And next. Next, we should welcome the Nordic colleagues. So, the Baltic colleagues, turn off your cameras. The Nordic colleagues, turn on your cameras. And the Baltic colleagues, can you find some emoji to welcome them? Yes, I see some clapping. Very good, very good. A little heart. Yes, we love being together today. And so now we see that your cameras work. So my next invitation would be to take a little group photo so we have something to remember from the day. So now, everybody, please turn on your cameras. Please smile for a little bit since we have several screens. We have 4 screens of participants. And I hope Marco will tell us when we're finished. We are smiling and some of us are even driving. Okay. Are we done, Marco? Can we go on? I hope so.
Yes, we are done. Thank you. You are so beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. Okay. And now we will also give a warm welcome to our trainers for today. And for that, I will read out their biographies. We have a very impressive list of lectures today. And I will find my notes. Just a moment. Here we go. So, Frans Picard is a former professor in guidance and counseling programs at Université Laval and director of the university's Centre de recherche et d'intervention sur l'éducation et la vie au travail in Quebec. This is the Center for Research and Interventions in Education and Working Life. Over the years, she has developed extensive research expertise in the field of the sociology of higher education. Her line of research pertains to the study of student paths, focusing on at-risk students with disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds or learning disabilities entering higher education through the lens of social justice. Next, we have Michel Turcotte, PhD, who is a career counselor and psychologist. Michel is a member of the university's Center for Research and Interventions in Education and Working Life in Quebec, Canada. He is the recipient of the Etta St. John Wildman Award in 2017, the Gold Medal of Leadership in Counseling and Career Development in 2014, and the Stu Conger Leadership Award in Counseling and Career Development in 2008. And Michel is also my dear colleague on the current board of the International Association of Educational and Vocational Guidance. So welcome, Michel. Simon Vivier is a professor in guidance and counseling programs at the Université Laval and a regular researcher at the university's Center for Research and Interventions in Education and Working Life. His research and teaching focus on psychological and social issues of work in the contemporary world, and also on research and support practices with groups and communities. He has published many articles about mental health and the power of school staff to act in relation to the work organization and the possibilities of developing their profession. And last but not least is Patricia Lyon, who is a professor in guidance and counseling programs at Université de Sherbrooke, Quebec, Canada. She is a regular researcher at the Center for Research and Transitions in Apprenticeship, Centre d'études et de recherche sur les transition et l'apprentissage, and at the Center for Research and Intervention in Education and Working Life at the University of Laval. Her research themes are group career counseling, cultural historical activity analysis, vocational guidance for adults in poverty and precariousness, immigration, and bilan de compétences or skill assessment. So, a very warm welcome to our speakers, and I give the floor to them. Let's enjoy the presentation.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Hilse and Margit, for this kind invitation to participate to the Euroguidance webinar on social justice and applied to career development practices. So, Amartya Sen is the Nobel Prize-winning economist, well known as the first scholar who developed the capability approach. So in this webinar, we will try to reflect all together on the implication of this approach for career development practices. My colleagues and I adapt this concept to our field. Our input is twofold. It's to explain the key concept of the capability approach. Sometimes it can be hard to understand and to explain too, I would say, and to illustrate the applicability of this approach to a variety of career development situations. These examples are drawn from various research works in education, mostly in higher education and in the world of work. Throughout the webinar, my colleagues and I will interrogate how and to what extent the capability approach can be meaningful for practitioners. Our main goal is to foster a more socially equitable practices based on the awareness of how discrimination works and how one could overcome inequities. So the agenda goes this way, as you can see: a short introduction, context, and preliminary thoughts about the social justice or ideas of justice, the key concepts and their illustrations. As Margit said, there will have a discussion among practitioners in the breakout rooms. And finally, to end the webinar, some key ideas drawn from your discussion and the conference as well. So first, I assume that as a practitioner and participant today, you must have already witnessed an unfair situation afflicting students, afflicting workers, immigrants, women, LGBTQ+ or NEET, those people that are not in education, employment, nor in training. I ask you to take a little time to remind a specific situation when you were experiencing a deep sense of injustice at work or a feeling of indignation. Maybe this can help you. So please, I ask you to keep this example in mind and try to relate your own professional experience to the concept of the capability approach. So when you registered, you were asked to answer a few questions. Let's see what you answered. For most of you, social justice is a concern in your career. As you mentioned, this assertion is somewhat or very true for you. But the second graph shows that the sense of competence to deal with unfair situation into the practice doesn't follow the same trend, as you can see. Less people reported that feeling competent is very true for them, and the ones who answer somewhat true don't have the same conviction, as the frequency decreases from the 4th to the 6th position. In fact, unfair situations afflicting people complicated their career choice, their career reorientation, or their integration into the world of work. Sometimes it may be a huge burden for practitioners as well. Inequity and discrimination are insidious. They have their roots in the characteristics inherited at birth or during the development of the identity. Studies in sociology reported inequity and discrimination related to the gender, the color of the skin, the socioeconomical status, the ethnocultural affiliations, religion, sexual orientation, and so forth. Those people who share one of these features don't have equal opportunities to choose a program, a job, or a life they really value. Inequity and discrimination in self are insidious, but they are both for the clients and the practitioner as well. Both of them may share the same bias about the inherited or learned disadvantaged position in society. Indeed, professional practices themselves can be the bearers of inequity, often without practitioners being aware of it. Later on, if you want to, you can provide example of this situation. So you can raise the question in the chat, but we proceed to explanation of some examples before. The concern for social justice in vocational guidance is nothing new. In North America, we refer to Frank Parson as a pioneer in vocational guidance. Since the beginning of the 20th century, he was assisting some of its most disadvantaged citizens in the United States. In recent years, there has been an international resurgence of interest in social justice, as evidenced in position taken by the EAEVG in its communique on social justice in Montpellier in 2013 Congress. Also, scientific journals have dedicated all issues to this topic. In this webinar, we sought to determine whether issues related to social justice are being sufficiently considered in the career development practices. We will present you plenty of examples from our research findings. We claim that the capability approach can be useful to unmask unjust situations, clarify the mechanism, and offer opportunities for more socially equitable career development practice. So, let's start with a little story proposed by Amartya Sen himself. So to illustrate this approach, Sen imagined this story. Three children are arguing over a flute, and the first kid claims the flute because she's the only one who knows how to play it. Kay defends her case for having the flute by pointing out that she's so poor that she has no toys of her own at home. And finally, Carla argues that she has been working very hard for many months to make the flute. She complains about the fact that she has just finished her work, and then Kate and Anne want to grab her flute. So now a question for you. According to what you think about social justice, who should get the flute? Anne, Kate, Anne, Carla, pardon me, and all of them. Marco, please, would you launch the poll? So I invite you to answer this question. I know it's a very difficult question, but I invite you to answer. It's just it's just an example. There's no good or bad answer, as you will see. So, does anyone else want to answer the question? So if there is no more answer, we will present the result. Please, Marco, would you share the result? Does anyone see the results? Yeah, okay. So let's start. So, Amartya Sen proposed this story to underline that there are competing reasons for justice that leads to different solutions, intervention, and consequences as well, when one's seeking more justice. The definition of justice one's practitioner has influences how one represents the inequity situation and how one is shaping the vocational intervention. I think most of you chose the easy option, all of them, huh? but I will explain what is the idea of justice undermining every position. According to Sen, those who chose Anne would probably have an utilitarian hedonist approach of justice because she's the only one who can really enjoy playing the flute. Let me add that this choice may appeal to artists who care about the development of the young musicians. The one who chose Kate would probably adopt an egalitarian perspective of justice that proposed to reduce the gap between the poorest and the richest. Again, I would say that many sociologists I know must agree with this definition of justice. The one who chose Carla, the girl who made the flute, should probably have a legalist approach of justice. She made the flute and has the entire right on her good. And the one who chose all of them to give, the one who chose to give a flute to every kid should share the John Ross justice, and it's an idea of justice that is shared among Occidental countries. This economist adopts an egalitarian approach too, based on equal distribution of goods among people. But Sen criticized this approach, and he proposed another idea of justice, the capability approach, focusing on the opportunities people may have or are deprived to live the life they really value. So we can stop can delete the poll result, please. And I will let the floor to my colleague Michel, who will start presenting the concept of the capability approach.
Yeah. Thanks, France. So as my colleague France said, we have adapted the model of social justice developed by Sen to career development field. So I'm presenting you and you may have seen it in the book too, is the model as a whole, and I will walk you through the different component and provide some example each time. So let's start with the first component we want to explain. So is the freedom to accomplish. So basically the capability of finding his own paths that to choose a career that makes sense, or to choose an education program that makes sense for the person. So let's define the concept. The key apply to guidance practices. So the key words are the freedom in choosing and living the life course that people have reason to value, and the barrier to freedom. Basically, is a central element of the concept: freedom in choosing and living the life course that people have reason to value. What we're looking at is really the opportunity that people have or may not have to exercise their freedom to choose and living the life course they want. So the key word again is the range of opportunity. We explore to some extent the range of opportunity that will lead to real freedom. Let's say in education, opportunity in choosing a program or career. In the preparation to work field, opportunity in participating in pre-employment and employment program. Those programs are they adapted to the people for whom they have been designed. Integration into the world of work, the job search element, choosing a career and choosing a workplace and a lifestyle. Yeah. Okay. So all the way when we're going to present, we'll have question to interrogate, interrogate the freedom to accomplish. So the leading question to foster, or to basically is the leading question that may help you to question from a capability perspective your practice. For example, here, typical question that could you ask yourself when when you're dealing with an individual client or a group of clients is the student a refugee or job seeker impacted by some form of inequality? Just to ask the question, does he or she benefit from the same freedom than his peer when it comes to educational and vocational choice and integration in the world of work? So you have a comparison. You have the regular, typical type of client you're seeing, but is to pay attention. Okay, are there other client that type of client that they may face some barrier? Do the study program, participation in employment program, and pursuing a career choice align with one's aspiration that of the person? So to question yourself on that, that's one way to evaluate to some extent the intervention we're making. Is or is she conditioned by stereotype or constraint choice? So again, series of questions that may help you to question, to identify the barrier at the individual level or group level, if you decide to do it as a group of counselor in a given institution. Okay. So I'm going to provide two case studies, as Franz said, we're going to provide examples from the research, different type of research we have conducted, but also some others doctoral students have conducted in relationship with the model. So the first one is in the higher education institution, and if you read the chapter, this is the one we've used to. It was part of the research we have conducted to test the model of we're presenting today, to gather information, more information and data around the model. And it was the purpose of the research was to gather information about the model, how it's working, but also to examine the access to higher education in different countries. In the country were Quebec, Canada, Switzerland, Belgium, France, and Burkina Faso in Africa. And we use the same methodology to compare the access to higher education and specifically the guidance services provided in those institutions. And we ran different interview in different institutions with career counselor and also director of services. And here is example in one institution of higher education that was located in an urban working class neighborhood of what type of barrier. When they did the group of counselors examined it, the type of barrier that maybe some of part of the population that they serve at the institution. So they wanted to see if they could. There was possibility to identify those population, and they found that a quarter of their student population has to face the following barrier: student enroll in program other than their first choice. Probably it's the same thing in your country when you want a high school student want to access higher education. They have to apply to a specific program and also different institution. They may get their first, second, third choice, whatever. Student with learning disability and adjustment difficulty. Parent, student returning after an interruption of study. So that's allowed this group of career counselor to identify maybe there are a quarter of their population were different, have some characteristics different than the rest of the population they serve, so they could develop strategy for them. So they ask question to some extent if they were population that he could serve better or have different needs. The second example is taking from another research. It was a research that aimed to develop a guide to assist counselor, career guidance counselor, to support the integration of refugee with low education. As it's probably the same thing in your country, we we experience an increase of refugees coming to our border and seeking help. And we found in consultation with Guidance counselor that it was a population that maybe they needed to pay more attention, and also to learn more how to interact with them, or maybe how to support them maybe differently than the rest of the population they typically serve. So they ran a series of research, this group, in order to develop the guide, to identify the barrier, to identify the need, and to identify the strategy. So the guide is available with CERIC, the same publisher that the other book, and it's in French at the moment, but it will be available in English at the end of the fall. So if eventually you would be interested. So let's look at the barrier they were identified for the integration of refugee with low education. They found that schooling and language school development was an issue, especially because for a lot of them didn't master even their mother tongue, in a sense that grammar, etc. So it has an impact on schooling, learning the new language, in our case French, and going back to school. Communication and understanding of information, how to communicate it in top of learning the language, but also accessing the information. Like in Canada, most of the resource you can access, or information about resource now, is done through web, through the internet. So population need to increase their level of literacy in information and communication technology. That was an issue for those refugees with low education. Physical and mental health. So a lot of them went through the journey, developed a trauma. So they have to deal with this trauma while they arrive. Precariousness and sense of urgency, need to find a job, need to find decent home to stay. Learning the code of the old society is not only the language, but also how you interact in the society, how you apply or whatever. So there is code to learn in the new society. Pre-employment in the world of work, how to learn how to navigate in the labor market, how to apply, how to search for a job in this new labor market, the law related to employment, and knowledge of government and community resource and how to access them. So here, the key point here is to identify, in order to exercise the freedom, what do we do as counselor in a one-to-one or a group of counselor to identify maybe barrier that's are confronted some of the population that come to our services. So the first thing is to do a kind of diagnostic of what kind of barrier we can observe in our services. So now it's Patricia who will walk you through the second component.
So the second component, you have the freedom to accomplish, and you also have the means to accomplish. So resources and formal rights are a fundamental condition for achieving social justice. I will give you example. So the education system is indeed a strong resource in order to achieve one's aspirations. Some example of formal rights are those enriched in law, such universal access to education in developed country up to 15 or 16 years old. Also, low tuition fees policy in university, like no fees at all in France or Tunisia, are formal rights that can contribute to leveraging inequalities among social access to higher education. In the world of work, labor laws also provide with formal rights to ensure decent work, but one question is whether all workers are protected by these formal rights. These rights include, for example, the access to employment and guidance resources, like Michel said in the example, refugees' needs when they arrive in the new countries. In Canada, this access is usually denied for asylum seekers. So all workers have access to employment and guidance resources, but not asylum seekers. In the capability approach, we consider guidance services as resources one can use in order to open up their aspiration and to know more about what they really value. So we talk about opportunities. So opportunities that they really value is important in this approach. We consider here that individual resources, such as competencies, which also means to accomplish. In sum, resources and formal rights are means to accomplishment. Depending on the organization of the educational system, there are different educational pathways to choose. Some of them leads to early educational choice. For example, in Switzerland, students and their family have to choose between a vocational path or an academic path when they're entering into a secondary institution. At the end of the primary level, the students are about 12 years old, so it's pretty young to make such choice, which has such impact in their life. On the other hand, like in France, the core curriculum goes up to the secondary 2, la seconde, and the students are about 16 years old. It's still young to make a choice, but at least they are more mature to do it. In Quebec, the core curriculum goes up to the beginning of secondary 4, and the students are about 15 years old when they have to choose a track in the education system. This example, like Mueller said, illustrate that different systems give parents and children different degrees of influence in making educational decisions they are faced with. The educational path they have to choose implying numerous and complex ramification points that are more or less easy to navigate. All this can influence educational decision. Indeed, different regulations, like those in your country, can have different impact on decisions made by different social groups. In the capability perspective, we could say that different education systems, educational or labor system can give different means to accomplish that impact the freedom of every person to accomplish. So if we go back to our 2 case study, we can ask ourselves, is in the higher education institution, does every student have the same right, formal rights, or the same resources? And in the same thing, does the refugees with low education have the same resources that all workers, or the same formal rights? We can also interrogate the right and resources in your institution. So you can ask actually if there is formal rights to protect students and workers. I made the difference between refugees and asylum seekers, for example. If the formal right exists, do the student or the workers know about those rights? Do the student affected by some form of inequalities, like those from disadvantaged group, have different access to those resources? And do workers or unemployed people affected by some form of inequalities, like those from this disadvantaged group, have different access to resources? So as Michel say, we can make a diagnosis about what kind of resources people have and what kind of formal rights. And there is difference between formal rights and to be able to use the rights. So we will talk about, France will talk about this after.
Thank you, Patricia. So as she already said, the resources and the formal rights are fundamental conditions for achieving justice. Yet on their own, they are not sufficient. Indeed, there are no guarantees at all that people would make any real use of them, even when they exist. Consequently, moving from the resources and formal rights to the capability of finding one's path involves leveraging the use of the conversion factors. Conversion factor is a central concept to career development because it is where practitioners have the real opportunity to overcome inequities. Indeed, conversion factor may be hard to understand. So my colleagues from Switzerland, Eugen Toblo-Marchand, used to explain the conversion factor this way. Suppose a city mayor wants to implement a bike service available to all citizens. To use this service, the one-legged citizen must get a prosthesis. So, to assure equity of using the new public service, the mayor can decide to help the one-legged citizen to buy a prosthesis. Here, the prosthesis is the positive conversion factor, the additional resource one's need to access a public service. Conversely, in this example, if the mayor chooses to charge extra fees in order to finance the buying of the prosthesis, we'd say that extra fees are a negative conversion factor. In a nutshell, conversion factors are called positive when they allow the mobilization of resources and laws to increase the freedom and opportunities for people. Negative conversion factors refer to situations inhibiting individuals from mobilizing laws and regulations or accessing existing resources to counter injustice. So let me give an example to assist you in understanding this concept and its scope in the intervention into career development practice. Dr. Marietta Sell led a study of the conversion factors of the Canadian university students enrolled in a master or a doctoral program that are facing invisible disabilities. They encompass mental health disease such as anxiety or depression. It's a common but serious mood disorder, an attention deficit disorder or ADD, and learning disability. That is a discrepancy between a student's academic achievement and one's apparent capacity to learn. In 2019, almost 1 in 5 university students in Canada self-declare a disability. In 1 in 4 cases, there were invisible disabilities. Those situations may complicate the student's university path, academic achievement, job preparation, and integration into the job market. In Canada, students who report their disability once they register at the university institution may benefit from free professional interventions, tools, workshops, or measures to compensate their disability during a course or an exam. And also, they are supposed to have access to all the resources available in the institution. Dr. Sall conducted the secondary analysis of the 2009 Canadian Graduate and Professional Student Survey. It's a survey launched every 3 years for more than 20 years now. She also conducted interviews with students reporting disabilities. To study the conversion factors, Sall considered many resources Canadian students can rely on in their university institution, and that they were embedded into the survey. She considered financial measures like scholarships, professional services like psychological service, counseling service, or vocational service, and employment service. There are many of them. And also plenty of measures to sustain the scientific career, like learn the scientific dissemination and to learn the research profession. From her findings, I grabbed 3 illustrations of positive and negative conversion factors, but let me say you that there are much more. So, after presenting the conversion factors at the left, I will take the Sall's finding to to reflect on how our finding can inspire us in the career development practices. So the first positive factor is it's a satisfactory relationship. The finding of the SAL research showed that a regular contact with a professor that may access to an institutional resource is a very important conversion factor. In career development practices, it is well known that working alliance between a client and a practitioner is positively related to a successful intervention. To establish a continuous relationship between a practitioner and a student based on trust could be a strong positive conversion factor. In this case, the practitioner himself or herself may be the positive conversion factor. The second one is the access to information. SAL found that having access to information about the availability of financial aid facilitates access to academic resources. In the career development field, having access to information about existing measures, programs, profession, condition of admission to a study program, financial aid, and so forth, is central to gain power, freedom, and room for maneuver for people seeking justice. And I will add this, never ever assume that information about those resources is well known by our clients. Personal positive conversion factors. SAL found that high achievers can camouflage their disability situation by developing different strategies, be they seeking resources outside of the institution, using medication, developing strategies to organize time and avoid forgetfulness, developing tips for concentration and stress management. In the career development field, the practitioners can try to detect what personal strategy were used in the past to counter the disadvantaged situation. Personal skills, competencies, and the use of personal strategy are examples of positive conversion factor. Let's move to the negative one. Conversely, SALS found that students with the so-called invisible disabilities were less likely to consult a professional service than their peers and less likely to participate to workshops on job preparation as well. Dr. Saul demonstrated that certain conditions attached to a measure set out to help people with an invisible disability can sometimes be binding, whether it is delays in the required disability assessment procedure or the non-recognition of a previous disability diagnosis. As a result, students who report mental health disease, ADD, or learning disabilities may be denied access to accommodation measures they really need to fulfill their aspiration. How this funding could inspire our practice? As practitioner in the career development field, you may witness institutional situation where resources are available, but with condition attached inhibiting the access to these resources. This is what we mean by a negative conversion factor. To help people facing obstacles in their educational and vocational path, you and your colleagues may interrogate the relevance to maintain certain access conditions to a career development program and the criteria attached to this program as well. As for for the other concept, the leading question could be this one. What inhibits a student, a worker, a refugee, and so forth from accessing career development resources and rights in an institution? So this requires the review of the rules, measures, methods of delivering vocational services, administrative obstacles with your client, your colleague, and your boss. Thank you. And now we continue with Simon.
Thank you, France. So we continue to go through the model. We now discuss the last part of the model, the accomplishment, which is reflected in the model as effective functionings. The question here is to know at which level one's choice of a path is really valued or not. In fact, Ultimately, a person may have the means to accomplish and the freedom to do so, but a question remains: is this a course of life that they really valued? Have they actually chosen what they want to do? Sense theory suggests that individuals' accomplishment may not necessarily indicate the presence of inequity in and of themselves. Is doing something linked to having chosen to do it? Did this young person really choose to study medicine? Did this woman really choose to become a housewife? We could assume that the young person really wanted to be in medicines, since it's a very popular choice of study, or that the woman did not choose to be a housewife because it is not socially valued. The capabilities approach invites us to question choices which may seem to us to reflect a real choice, as well as those which may seem constrained a priori. The concept of adaptive preference is enlightening on this subject. This concept describes the tendency of individuals to adjust their aspirations according to their constraints or past experiences, often to accept limited conditions to correspond to the norms relating to their vulnerable situation. Typically, in educational and professional guidance, this results in young people who, faced with obstacles, social, economic, or educational, reduce their ambitions and choose less valued or desired options. But this could be also the case of a young person who comes from a very wealthy family whose professional aspirations are restricted to those associated with their social class. The aim is therefore to gather data on the alternatives available at the time the individual made his or her choice. In terms of freedom of choosing, there is a clear difference between opting out of a course by default or because it corresponds to one's preferred orientation. Let's take a look at these as our examples. So, in the higher education institution located in an urban working class neighborhood, the example taken by Michel and Patricia, some students may have chosen their programs by default or to follow the social norms linked to their environment of origin. For example, the students enrolled in program other than their first choice, maybe it's a valuable plan B or not. For students with learning disabilities and adjustment difficulties, they may have chosen their programs by default because there were not other options for them. For the parent students, maybe they have chosen their programs because they wanted class schedule compatible with their family needs or not, and not because they value the program. For the other example, in the employment services supporting the integration of refugees with a low education, some refugees may narrow their job search based on what they think is available to them in their host society. As Patricia said before, refugees face important barriers in their integration. The difficulties concerning mastery of language and the cultural codes, for instance, may interfere with their exploration of real opportunities for them to find a job and a life course they have reasons to value. So let's now take a look at the leading questions to foster enabling guidance practices from a capability approach. The investigation of the accomplishment, the effective functionings, and the decision-making process may take the form of these questions. What is beyond the students' or the workers' accomplishment? The exploration of the reasons to value or not the life course they have chosen. What possibilities were considered, discarded, or obscured at the time of making an educational or vocational choice? Does the student or the worker has been given the opportunity to do otherwise? Has student provided input about the career choice or the job seeker about the job or the life course? So these are questions you may ask yourself when you conduct an interview with clients. So, ultimately, one of the central questions that we ask in the capabilities approach to promote an orientation focused on social justice is the following. What could be the achievements if some of the barriers in one's environment, for instance, access to resources, changes to administrative rules, were removed, or if resources were available, and how to remove these barriers? Barriers can be at different levels, as we have seen, and we may work to remove these barriers at each of these levels. On an individual level, we can work with clients to ensure that they can broaden and critically examine possible life courses. For example, there may be reframing work and possible negotiation on the values or options valued, or even recommended by parents of young people. At the collective level, we may, for example, want to work in an association defending the rights of people with disabilities to ensure that they have access to the widest possible range of work environments. At the political level, we can, for instance, get involved in the promotion and advancement of public policies that would help avoid school segregation. There could be thousands of examples, and you might be able to inspire us with the next exercise. Michel.
Okay, so we went through the whole model, and we'd like to give you a chance in small group discussion, maybe to explore in your own setting, own experience, maybe some of the elements of we have discussed here. So we'd like to propose. So we're proposing that you will be sent to breakout room, 6 or 7 people per breakout room. It will be done automatically, so you will arrive in those breakout room. And what we ask you to do is maybe first to introduce yourself. You may not come from the same country, same type of institution. Take a time to do it. And you will ask also yourself, the group member, if you want to report at the end. So when we come back to the larger group, we will ask 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 groups to report, to say something about their discussion if they wish. But while you are in a small group, decide if you want to do it, and if you do it, identify the person, and when you will come back in the larger group, you will put in the chat the name of the person, because we don't have any way to know which group you are, who raised, even to see your hand raised. So, okay, so I see Margaret put the instruction in the chat. So we have 3 questions. So you can answer all of them, or you can discuss all of them, or focus on one, but you have 20 minutes for the conversation. Can you provide example of program, services, or practices that may contribute to reducing inequity for client in your organization? Second question, at time, practice or educational or employment program can perpetuate inequity or discrimination, even when practitioners are striving for social justice. Are you encountering situations that may contribute to exacerbating inequality? Provide example if it's come to your mind. If you take action on behalf of your client, advocacy, to defend their right or access to quality guidance services, how is it done? Is it done at the individual level, you as a counselor? Collective, it could be the whole, your organization, or political. So that's the question we would like to leave with you for conversation. You have 20 minutes for a conversation, and then when we come back, some of you may report of what they're finding, what they have discussed, a key element that they have would like to highlight. So from this point, I guess, Marco, you will be the one who will send the people to the smaller room, breakout room. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, welcome everybody. I have opened the breakout rooms. Everyone who indicated their preferred language of breakout room have been assigned. So feel free to just join the room. Everyone else who didn't indicate that they would like to attend these small breakout rooms have not been automatically assigned, but you are free to just choose a suitable room. You can see the rooms by names and who are and what language this room should be in. So you are free to just also join in on open rooms and join in the discussion. And the rooms will close automatically in 20 minutes. If you have any kind of questions, feel free to just write to the chat, and we will try to help you right away. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I'm checking the chat to see if there is any group who would like to report or to say something about their discussion. Give example of maybe they have discussed in their group in terms of how they may do some demonstration with the client, type of client, of running a practice from a from the capability perspective of social justice. So I don't see any name unless Margaret, you see that? Ah, okay, I see. Ah,
Ilse is ready to share.
Ah, okay.
Thank you, Ilse.
Okay. Yes. We realized that in the education sector, actually, Latvia has a very equitable system. One is the fact that if you choose a direction of studies in your secondary school, if you choose vocational education, for example, it's not, there are no so-called dead ends. You can go on to higher education after vocational training, and after you finish university, if you realize you don't like the field you're in, you're eligible to go for vocational training. So in that sense, the field of education provides opportunities that are, that are enabling. And also, there have been projects to make careers education and career counseling available in schools. The only issue is that not all schools have enough, or maybe not all directors prioritize necessarily staff salaries for career guidance practitioners. So there are children who, for example, if they want individual sessions, then that's difficult for a career counselor to ensure. Maybe group counseling is more available than individual sessions. But in terms of like access to excursions and things like that, there's a government-funded program called School Bag, Skolasoma, which means that even children from socially disadvantaged families can join different school field trips to gain a wider experience of life and work opportunities. And yeah, so we discussed that actually schools in Latvia do a lot to try and ensure social justice to children. And yeah, I think, and that is generally a policy in the education sector. So that's it for our group.
Okay, thank you, Ilse. It's interesting, especially with the education sector. That, okay, this kind of, when you say it's not a dead hand, so when you choose a program. So eventually it is possible for students to choose to make a change eventually of their program. My colleague, anything to add, to comment on what else reported?
We have the same in Quebec, like for the difference between in each school to access to individual guidance counseling. It's not the same, like we say, ratio of one counselor per sum of students. So we have like the same problem to, there is in some place in Quebec, it's easier to have access to a guidance counselor, and in some school, a student have this difficulty to access when they want it and when it's meaningful for them.
Okay.
Okay, I would add, it's interesting, yes, that your commentary is very interesting. In Quebec, the educational pathway is designed in order that students have the opportunity to change program, to go back from higher education to a vocational training and so forth. And there is no constraint about their they can study in different programs if they want. So that is a positive a positive conversion factor, I would underline, and that's not the case in every educational systems. In our international comparison, we studied the France educational system, and there's no way to go back or to change program at the university level. So I would say that in the countries with such educational design, there are more constraints, there are less opportunities. So.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see any other name. Is there anybody would like to give additional example, maybe at the counselor level, maybe what could have been done, or could have been what has been done maybe in some of your institution? No. Okay. Okay, so we'll yes, Days. Yes, Days, you can. We don't hear you, Days.
Yeah, no. Hi, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm from Latvia, and I have worked for many years with the program called Proti and Dari in Latvia, and that is the program for needs segment for young people who are either not employed or currently are not in the work setting. So since 2016, I have been with different city councils working with this program and young people. So what I noticed that sometimes even giving these young people opportunities, I have many contacts with organizations and corporate clients, and I have been bridging these young kids with the organizations and secured for them internships. And there have been good examples and bad examples. There have been examples where these young people really are engaged and taking part and very grateful for the opportunities, and there have been cases where probably additional support is needed for their mental health because of the different backgrounds they have had, because either they do not appear or they are just for 1 or 2 days in that internship program. So there is a bigger work needs to be done because sometimes just by bridging them together with the employers is not enough. So this probably mental health and other support programs are needed for them, taking into account their their backgrounds and low self-confidence. That is one thing which we discussed. The other topic we discussed in our group, we were 3 in our group from Estonia and Mona from Norway was having a very good example. She's currently working on research for her master's thesis with the age group 55 plus. And we discussed that this is another group which might be not just in one country, but across different regions in a position less favorite because there are many evidences that people are not so attractive anymore for employers after the age of 55. And I was giving an example that, from my experience, because I have been from time to time involved in headhunting and recruiting projects. And I have discussed in London, being here, studying in London for 2 years now, experience with headhunting here and also back in Latvia, that there are employers who are having these hidden messages to recruiters not to employ people over 50. I have experienced that myself, and I shared and asked people here who are working with recruitment in London, and they said that they have experienced this too. So what was the takeaway message from our group is that maybe not only young people need support, but also those who are closer to retirement, maybe 50, 55 plus. That group also needs to be in radar probably. Thank you.
Thanks, Dace. So I can hear here. So try an identification of barrier to exercise freedom. So we have some group that we need to pay maybe more attention to provide them, maybe to help them, to provide opportunity to open up the opportunity to exercise their freedom. And one of the first steps is really to identify those groups in order to go beyond. My colleague, any other comments? Simon?
Maybe briefly. We took a lot of examples coming from schools and from refugees, but you enlightened the fact that there is a larger population in the career development practices. So I think your example is important in the fact that many societies are facing challenges about the integration of 50 and plus people in the world of work. And I think you also focus on an interesting thing about the capability approach, which is barriers are not always structurals, institutionals, visible barriers, but there are also cultural. So with your example about employers who hide the norms that they are performing about not hiring older people. I think it's difficult for us, for career development practitioners, to act on these barriers as they are invisible and really difficult to act on.
Merci, Simon.
Yes, I would like to add a comment. Dace, you said firstly you said that in the program, the preparation to work with the need people, there were some successful case and not that are and other that are not. There is a group of a European group of researchers led by Otto, who were asking if the programs we set for people, are they compulsory, or does people have the right to unregister without any constraint for them? So that's that's an important thing that we call that in the capability approach, the capability to exit. Can you exit freely a program without being
penalized?
Yeah. Thank you, Michel. Okay, so that's an important point I would like to, and it's a concern for the government and also for the counselor who want to set out a program with a social justice approach. Does people involved in a program have the freedom to stay or to leave? So that's what I'd like to have.
Okay. I have also Eli Parna, who expressed that she could report.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So first of all, I just wanted to comment that in the previous discussion, I very much agree with the fact that more attention should be also provided to people a certain age who maybe want to change careers. Because I think there's a lot of taboo about it. Like we need to have everything decided and set by a certain age. And just from our group, because we ended up being three Estonians, and we had a lot in common, and in particular, we had the commonality of all three of us. We have lived abroad for a long time, and then returned. Well, I'm returning next year, and the other two people have returned back home. So we ended up talking a lot about this phenomenon of actually having this shock when you return, even if it's your own home country, and how that affects you in many different ways, but including your career. Especially like I'm returning after having lived abroad for 20 years, and Estonia has changed enormously in the last 20 years. So that was something that we all discussed about how this new integration into the society and into the workforce, and how it often feels quite isolating, because it's like, well, you came back into your own country, but it has a lot of effects on you. So just wanted to share that aspect as well.
This is, yes, it could be another example of for a guidance services to identify maybe some group of people that may need additional assistance, because to realize that people arrive with different they have lived different thing, and maybe how to facilitate the integration. Maybe each time we identify a barrier, it could be the movement to provide specific or targeted services. My colleague, any comments, additional comment? Okay. Okay. Reverse culture shock. Okay. Okay. So I don't have. In the conversation, we say Eli described it reverse culture shock, the phenomenon of reverse culture shock. Yes. Okay. So I don't see any other name would like to report. So we may continue. Okay. I have maybe a last one. Eli Eirik. Okay, I think your mic is not open.
It's Hela. Thank you. We didn't discuss the main topics very much, because we instead discuss about whether very rich people want also career counseling or not, and in which case they should it want. But some examples in the Estonian Unemployment Fund, there is an opportunity for deaf people they can receive interpretation services for counseling, and also for blind people, there is signs in Braille. And there was lots of refugees after the war began. So we offered information in their mother language, and also opportunity to learn our language. So, and also if we see the need of psychological counseling, we can offer that also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ella. So that's an identification of a group that needs, they're facing specific barrier, language and a lack of information, maybe psychological assistance. So I can hear that, okay, once we identify them, we can offer them services. My colleague? No, okay. Okay. So on that note, we'll continue with we'll conclude with the presentation, and we'll see if there is a question after that. Okay, so let's resume the model. So from a professional practice, from a capability approach perspective of social justice. So one of the first thing we look at, the key element is the freedom to accomplish. To what extent we open up the range of opportunity, we reduce the barrier to allow people to have more opportunity to accomplish. To accomplish meaning finding his own path, his own life path, according to this that the person has a reason to value. And there are resource means to accomplish. So the resource from a right that often allowed that. We discussed that, especially when it's often policy, law, and program that will allow that. But one of the key elements where, as a counselor, we can act in identifying the barrier. But once the barrier identified, we can act as a counselor at the individual level or collective level, and in a positive manner, or sometimes, if we're not conscious, our bias in a negative way. But there is a room for us to activate the resource in formal right to make sure that the people can access them. And ultimately, we can evaluate what we have done at the individual and collective level in assessing and checking, investigating with our client or group of clients if we're really opening up their opportunity to exercise their freedom to choose. So that's bring me to the practice point. The practice point we put 4 practice points, so something to leave with in the chapter criteria and model in action. And if you notice all along the presentation, we proposed some key leading question that could be used at any time to identify barrier, to identify the resource, to act as a conversion factor. So to some extent, the practice points summarize those type of question. And that's kind of one of the things we found in using the model here. We use it in the educational program to train future career counselor and to examine. So we help them to examine how they could, from a social justice perspective, exercise their future job. So we use the model to question themselves. So the model is interesting in a sense to question ourselves, the way we work as an individual, but also as a group in a given institution. And the question here are just to remind us to okay, to give some direction to the evaluation or assessment we can do of ourselves. For example, examine the resource and the formal right pertaining to guidance services. We got some example coming from the subgroup. Consider whether or not student job seeker from targeted population are impacted by an inequality or have different access to. We have got an example with the refugee where we provide interpretation, social, psychological services to them, or use of educational and employment right and resource compared to those of their peer. To compare with one of the elements important when we look at our practice from the lens of the capability approach is we could compare with the peer group and see if from the peer group, if we have group that we need to pay more attention. Second practice point, identify the conversion of resource and formal right into guidance choice. It's really the place as a counselor. We have maybe more, we could be more active, find out what prevents a student or job seeker from accessing career development resource and right in an institution. Identify the measure information of resource that help the student and job seeker having access to the services. The term accessibility to services is also key here. What can we do as a counselor to provide maybe better access to the services, especially for those who are most in need? Evaluate the capability of finding own paths. So is really to identify the barrier. Consider the real freedom that student and job seeker have when they choose a path in paying attention to the range of possibility. Determine if student and job seeker are impacted by some form of inequality. When we identify them, we can act on it. From the same freedom or less freedom from their peer. And finally, question what is behind the accomplishment. Already when we check, often we have client who comes and they have a choice in mind. A choice of a career path or a job or a lifestyle, whatever. And we don't question them. There is a moment where we can question, where does it come from? What have you discarded? What have been the barrier you have to overcome? So there is room for individual counseling to investigate those choices, and that's what we to evaluate to what extent the client exercises freedom to accomplish. So that's what ends our presentation. I just put here the Karjääriarendamise model at work, the idea of practice. We mentioned a guide to integrate help to integrate the refugee with low education. As I said, it's in French, but it will be available in English soon. And we put here some reference for your benefit. And I guess at this point, if any of my colleagues want to say something, fine. Otherwise, I would give let Margit and Elsa finish the webinar. So my colleague, have you anything to say to conclude?
Thank you to all of you to have participated to this seminar. It was really nice to see you today.
Okay. Then I would like to say thank you on behalf of organizers. Really glad that Canadian experience is now reachable also for the Nordic and Baltic colleagues, and it was a great opportunity. I would also like to thank our interpreters who did a great job for Estonian community, and also a special thanks to Public Employment Service in Estonia who made this interpretation possible for today. But now Ilse has a floor for final messages.
Okay. On your screen in front of you, you see a QR code. This code leads to a brief survey because we'd really like to have some feedback from all of you who participated about what you gained from this intervention from our Canadian colleagues. So please be so kind. The scheduled time ends at 5, so you have 10 minutes on your calendar free to fill in the survey. So we'd be very grateful if you take the time to do it now. And I see that Margit has been so kind. For those of you who don't enjoy using QR codes, you can also access the survey via the link in the chat that Margit has kindly provided. So as Margit mentioned also in the beginning, this is part of a series of 4 events that the Nordic and Baltic Euroguidance colleagues are organizing. The next colleagues up will be Estonia and Lithuania and Norway on the topic of AI. What does AI mean for the individual counselor? And please keep your eyes open for announcements of the registration link if you'd like to learn more about this topic. If anybody has any comments that they'd like to share in the chat or maybe live, any impressions from the event, you're welcome to do so as well. I think we've had a lot of food for thought, and we also discussed in our group that it was very fruitful to have these questions for counselors to assess both the client's situation and our own counseling practices. That this is a very helpful lens for us to look at our work, to not make assumptions that our practice is socially just, but to have some indicators so that we can understand where we are, where we're headed. So thank you so much for that valuable content. Oh, and for those of you who are eager to join the next event, our Lithuanian colleague Gileta has actually inserted the registration link in the chat, so you're welcome to take that up as well. Gileta or Catalina, do you have anything that you'd like to add from your side?
So the link is in the chat. The information is updated, so you're all welcome to register for the next webinar on artificial intelligence, which will take place on the 6th November for 1 hour and 15 minutes, starting at 10 Central European time. So see you all. All are welcome.
Okay, thank you, Gileta. All right. Well, then with that, I believe we have covered all the information that we had for you today, except for Margit has raised her hand. Apparently, I've missed something. Sorry. Go ahead, Margit.
Yes, one final note you see in the chat, there is this blog article we have been mentioning for those who haven't reached it so far. So it's now uploaded on our website. So if you don't have the book in English available or the one in Estonian, then there is a bit shorter article available online.
Great. Wonderful for sharing resources. All right.
And thank you all. All the best and see you on November 6th. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Merci. Thank you.
Merci. Bye.